There are movies where you have to stop watching for a second, turn to the imaginary camera and say, "That's messed up." Here's 4 of those movies. The Belko Experiment. Set in the middle of nowhere in Colombia stands a tall building. Workers clocking like they do every weekday, but this time there's something unusual happening. Guards with firearms are checking IDs and sending the locals away and only letting the Americans inside. Other than that, everything seems to go like normal until a voice starts telling them what their fate will be. There are 80 people in the building they're in, and most of them won't be alive by the end of the day. Their current task is to kill 2 of their co-workers by any means necessary to ensure their own survival. At first, people don't really take it seriously as they think it's just a douchebag playing a prank on them, but then the phone lines get cut off and the metal shutters all around the building start closing, trapping them inside. The CEO of the company holds an emergency meeting and tells everyone to calm down and trust him to get to the bottom of this. But before he can figure out what's going on, people's heads start exploding. They think there's a shooter inside, but it doesn't look like a bullet wound, so our protagonist Mike, who is also a genius, has a moment of devastating realization. There is no shooter, it's the tags. The company is situated in Colombia, where there are a lot of kidnapping cases apparently, and as a safety protocol, they put these GPS tags in every worker's neck before they start working there, so in case they get kidnapped, the company can locate them and alert the police. But obviously they're not GPS tags, they were basically tricked into putting a bomb inside their heads, and now their lives are at the mercy of whoever is doing this. Mike tries to get the tag out, but they tell him that they'll pull the lever on him. They see everyone's movements because aside from the security cameras, the whole building is covered in hidden cams, even the restrooms. There's nowhere to go, nowhere to hide from the big brother. Their next task is to kill 30 of them, and if they don't, 60 of them will be killed on random instead. At a certain point, they group up. There's a small but mighty group of men who used to be in the army, threatening everybody with guns they took from the weapon safe in the building, which somehow didn't make anyone suspicious until now. They think that killing 30 people to ensure the lives of the others is a worthy sacrifice because otherwise 60 of them will drop dead. Then there's the rest of the people who think that that's ridiculous because why would they stop at 30? They didn't stop at 2. But because they're the ones holding the guns, their plan is put into effect and the CEO starts shooting until the power is cut off by the newbie. It's her first day at the job, she's a lucky lady. Everyone scatters away, but time unfortunately runs out, so 60 people are killed on random. Because there's so few people alive now, the voice says that the one with the most kills wins. The one who stands at the end is obviously our protagonist, Mike. He acted like a hero, tried to save everyone, went against the bullies, lost the love of his life, and came victorious. He's taken to the hangar, and there he learns that this whole thing was a government-funded social experiment done by scientists who think that they deserve to observe human behavior under life-or-death situations to collect data, so that the next world to be built will be better than this one. One of the loony dudes in the movie had collected the tags from the workers who were killed by the CEO instead of the bombs, so Mike blows these men up by using those. He gets out of the hangar and we see that he wasn't the only one. Hundreds of cameras show someone just like him, meaning he's not alone and many more people have perished for this experiment. I mean, obviously, what kind of an accurate scientific data would they be collecting with just 80 people? I don't really look for a coherent plot in these kind of movies, I look to have fun. This movie has neither. It doesn't even capture the Office essence, to be honest with you. Not enough people holding silly grudges against one another. Not a single death scene with an office supply. I mean, not even stapler action. You had the opportunity to either make a movie with a really good commentary on corporate America, capitalism, power dynamics, and hierarchy in an office environment, or a fun slasher where white-collar workers smash each other's heads with a photocopier. But you didn't make either. Instead, you made this schlock. There wasn't even any gossiping divas. What kind of a fucking office is that? Infinity Pool is like White Lotus, but somehow more deranged. A couple meets another couple on an island resort and they spend a day together. The beach, drinking, eating, handies, you know, the usual. On the way back to the resort, James accidentally runs over a man. He's woken up by the authorities that night and gets arrested. The law of the island of Letolka says if someone kills a person on purpose or due to an avoidable accident, like driving under the influence, then the eldest son in the victim's family has the right to take revenge. But the good news is that if you're a rich foreigner, you can pay a sum of money to the government, get naked, and step into this tomato soup-like liquid after your measurements are taken so that your body double can be crafted to be executed on your behalf. And this is no simple body double. This is basically cloning yourself where you have all your memories collected so far. That is you, and you are obligated to watch yourself die. Seeing yourself be stabbed to death by a 13-year-old would mess with anyone's head, but James finds this rather amusing, which leads to an argument between him and his wife M, and the argument gets even more heated when James can't find his passport, which means they can't leave the island. He goes down to the lobby to get some help and is once again seduced by Mia Goth. Turns out both her and her husband Albin and their rich friends have gone through the same process as James. The island has very strict laws, and things like stealing, murder, or even certain sexual activities is punishable by death, and this rich group of people who call themselves zombies come to the island every year to have a little bit of fun. After mingling for a while and waiting for James to get comfortable around them, they tell him about their big plan. The owner of the resort was awarded with a Medal of Honor, and they want to take it from him. It doesn't take much to convince James, so they bust a gift shop to steal some masks, and they break into the resort owner's villa. Chaos ensues, shots are fired, and they find themselves back in white jackets. This time, the detective who arrested them isn't so kind, and he tells them that maybe this time he should make an example out of these rich assholes instead, so they learn not to wreak havoc on the island however they want, and the group is taken into the execution chamber. James tries to fight back, but to no avail, and they all die. Or do they? After realizing that you can do anything and the only consequence is just some money, James gets swept away into madness, into drug-infused parties where a lot of sex is happening, and they're all there at the same time, and there's a nip imagery where something comes out of it, and I don't even know what it was, but it was disgusting, and I wish I was a Barbie doll. One night, they abduct a detective who arrested James that first night, and drunk and drugged and wanting revenge, James starts beating him up and even goes as far as pissing on him, just for it to be revealed that the man under the hood was James himself this whole time. You see, zombies paid the detective for another double of James so that they could mess with him, and they tricked him into beating and degrading himself. He panics and runs back into his room and grabs the passport he purposefully hid under the sink so that he wouldn't have to leave the island. With M already gone, he takes the airport shuttle the next morning, but the group obviously finds him and continues humiliating him. They targeted him on purpose because he's a good-for-nothing, pathetic leech whose only accomplishment is a book he wrote 6 years ago that nobody read, and he was stupid enough to believe that he found his biggest fan, who happened to be an enchanting woman, on a fucking island. They were initially gonna frame him, but he's so dumb he took care of that himself by running over that man. They used him, degraded him, humiliated him, abused him, solely for their own enjoyment. James creates an opening and starts running, but Mia Goth shoots him in the leg. He comes across a farmhouse, but when he wakes up in the night, realizes he is found once again. They push him to kill his double, they put on a leash and refer to as the dog, and then Mia Goth breastfeeds James, calling him a sucky baby. The next morning, everyone gets on the shuttle, dressed completely differently, talking about the errands they have to run when they get home, their work, their kids, like nothing even happened. They all get on the plane and leave, except for James, who trauma-bonded with the island now and can't find the courage to face the real world. Infinity pool is not a hard concept to understand, but that doesn't make the movie any less fascinating. Without a hiccup, it displays what it would mean to be ridden of any responsibility and consequence. If you could get away with anything, how far would you go, and how shameless would you be in your actions? When the consequence and the guilt are removed from a person, the humanity and the moral compass of that individual diminish as a result, and the only thing driving them becomes pleasure and the need for it, which is sort of like a zombification. I mean, it's no coincidence that the group calls themselves zombies. A lot of what happens in the movie happens when the characters are under the effects of hallucinogenics, so the question of what's real and what's not is ever present, especially throughout the second and third act, and the reality of the situation gets even more muddy because you can never know if the characters are the originals or the doubles. Even they don't know that. There's also the theme of emasculation looming over James. I don't know what it is about Alexander Skarsgård, but I have no trouble believing that that man is in fact pathetic. James wants to become a successful writer, but he can't write for shit, and his money source is his wife, and they both know that. He is nothing without her because he has nothing. He hasn't picked up a pen in 6 years, and he made her book a resort so that he can find his inspiration, but he doesn't even like to leave the resort and explore the island. Like, does he expect to find whatever he's looking for in a pool floaty? And when a beautiful woman comes up to him and tells him that she read his book, which is the first time that's ever happened, he's ready to do anything she wants. She tells him that his wife is holding him back, and women like him love to do that, and it's like, hell yeah. Finally, someone says it, and completely believes that displays of excessive violence and debauchery will somehow make him a man again. And the zombies contribute to this as well by making him feel like he's growing and improving, becoming stronger, becoming more like himself, and he will do anything to feel celebrated because he yearns for it. He is pathetic through and through, and unfortunately there's something so satisfying about watching his degradation ritual and his weak escape attempts after he realizes they're not laughing with him, they're laughing at him. Mean Creek is about taking revenge from your bully. Sam gets beaten up at school by George. His big brother Rocky and his friends come up with a plan to put George in his place and teach him not to mess with Sam again. They trick him into thinking that it's Sam's birthday and they're going on a boat trip. Their plan is to play truth or dare, and the dare for George will be to strip naked and get into the lake. That they're gonna steal his clothes and ditch him so he'll have to walk back home naked. When they spend time with George, they change their minds though. It's not because George turns out to be a misunderstood angel, but they realize that he's not all that bad. He's not a one-dimensional evil creature, but a kid just like them. He has moments where he's sensitive and kind, and moments where he's an obnoxious dickhead, but he's human all around. One thing leads to another, and Rocky's friend Marty and George get into an argument in which they tell George about their initial plan. Feeling obviously deceived and betrayed, he starts saying things he shouldn't say. He teases Marty, purposefully angers him by screaming about how Marty is father of himself. And Marty doesn't like that, so he gets physical, and in that heated moment, just to shut him up, Rocky pushes George off the boat. George doesn't know how to swim, so he drowns. Marty convinces the other kids to bury the body instead of telling the police about what happened, because alongside George, his camcorder also fell in the water and he had footage of all of them. So if it ever gets found, then they'd all be sent to prison. But if the body isn't found, then no one would look for the camcorder in the lake. But when they get home, against Marty's words, kids come clean about what happened. Mean Creek does a great job at making you feel on edge. You never feel comfortable even for a second. You try to grip onto the calm scenery, but it doesn't work because you're still waiting for the moment where things will escalate. What happens doesn't shock you because you expect it. The movie doesn't even attempt to catch you off guard. Knowing what's coming, you just weigh every scene with caution and you prepare yourself and it doesn't come. You prepare yourself and it doesn't come, but you can't relax because every interaction where the kids are getting along ends with someone's limits being tested and you think this could be it. The movie doesn't really care to make a statement either. It doesn't ask you more questions like, did George deserve it? He is a piece of shit. I mean, no doubt about that. He knows how to push other people and you never forget that. He uses violence over inconsequential matters or sometimes over nothing. He uses slurs to refer to one of the kids, even though he knows it makes him upset because he's got two dads. He's sweet in 1 second and snaps in the next. His unstable nature is part of the reason why you're on edge. But he also seeks validation and acceptance and will do anything and say anything to impress his new friends like children do. He's a lonely dyslexic kid, so lonely that he makes up stories in his head about his learning difficulty, tries to make himself feel better about it by saying that the reason for him saying every word backwards is because maybe he's the chosen one, and when the aliens arrive he's gonna be able to interact with them with no problem. He's trying to make sense of his condition because no one else is doing that for him. The movie keeps reminding you that he's just a kid, and in fact it does that for all of them. How Marty's tough act only works on others, but he gets small against his older brother. How Rocky tells Sam that he's his big bro and he can do anything and makes silly promises. How Sam can't really see the consequences of his actions and always looks up to his brother for answers. How Clyde can't really find neither the words nor the courage to defend himself or his dad's, so he just goes silent. And how Millie tries to revive someone who's long gone. Their actions lead to a catastrophic ending, but their actions also make sense for them. It doesn't feel random. The result isn't something they consciously tried to achieve, but it's also something that they each wanted for a split second in the movie. It's that moment where we all want our bully to disappear so that they stop bothering us, but we don't want them to die. The kids waiting on the boat as they're watching George drown is that moment happening in real time, before the realization sets in. Womb is one woman's attempt at holding on to the man she loves, but at what cost? Rebecca and Thomas met on the beach when they were kids, and they're each other's first love. After a few months spent together, Rebecca leaves to move to Japan with her mom. The next time they ever see each other is 12 years later. Thomas moved out of his parents' house and is living on the beach. For a second, he doesn't remember Rebecca, but then he does. And just like that, their love is reignited. Rebecca is a software engineer and Thomas is an environmental activist. They opened a wellness center named Sparkling Park, at least that's what they call themselves. They're a disaster to the environment, just like any other billion-dollar company, so his group is going on the opening day to protest. He's been breeding cockroaches and they're gonna release thousands of them once the doors open to create a panic. Rebecca tags along with him, but on the road she gets out of the car to pee. Thomas is hit by a truck and killed. A love lost too soon to be found, years later to be lost once again, this time permanently. Well, at least that's how it would be in the real world, but in the movie's fictional world, you get to clone people. Isn't that nice? It works a bit differently than all the other clonings we know though, because these clones have to be born and raised like a normal baby, which means someone has to carry this child. But why isn't Rebecca carrying the child? I mean, it's not even like she has to carry it. A company who clones people this way surely has a surrogacy option, but even if not, you could pay someone to do it. Why is giving birth to your lover your first plan, Rebecca? This woman gives birth to Thomas, who at every stage looks exactly the same as he did before. She even gives him the same name. We can never fully guess whether she's doing this to bring back Thomas so she can get together with him again, or just because she needs him to exist in her life and the relationship she has with him doesn't really matter to her. Because of this, there are multiple scenes up for debate, and I can't tell you if Rebecca is acting like a mother or a lover in any given moment. I could not tell you for sure whether Thomas is being taken advantage of as a child and they have an abusive relationship or not. But my feelings say yes. I mean, there's a scene where they play a fight and Thomas is on top of her holding her arms at her sides and he says, "Now I can do whatever I want with you," and she says, "Go ahead," and she's also visibly aroused. And there's a bath scene. Somehow it's even worse. As the years pass, Thomas becomes a man and his girlfriend starts living with him and his mom. Rebecca at this point becomes bedridden because every time she looks at him, she sees the man she's in love with. And every time she tries to go to sleep, she hears the noises the man she's in love with and his girlfriend are creating on their shared bed. Eventually, he finds out the truth and they have, I don't know what to call it. Consent is doing cartwheels in the air. But Thomas leaves Rebecca at the end of the movie and goes on his own way. He leaves because he doesn't know who he is or who she is anymore, both because she used to be his lover, and that's weird, but also because she brought him back in a way Thomas would never agree with, and she doesn't even seem to realize it. He's the creation of the company he died on the way to protest. He was born out of the evil he tried to rid the world of. How do you come to terms with that? If I had $1 for every time Eva Green played a mother figure who's attracted to the child she's supposed to protect, then I would have $2. I don't want these dollars.